Hey, folks, we're in Proverbs 4. We're no better off from a war situation than they were a year ago, unfortunately. In fact, we're worse in so many ways. And again, let this study and this doing business of the study of Torah at least affect our own lives in this week leading up to the elections here, for those of you who are in the United States and vote. I hope if you're able to vote that you do vote or you have voted. And all of our study online is I believe it contributes in a small way, at least, to our own growth, but also to the fact that we build language in which we can hear different views. And while it is a little bit less accentuated in the Proverbs group compared to, say, the interfaith study of the gospel according to John, still, I think this is important, and this is how we grow. And we're doing the business of study of Torah, and I'm using the word business intentionally because we'll get to that in a little bit. But for now, we're in Proverbs 4, and the overall theme that it came up in my mind for this chapter is keeping your eye on the prize. The prize, of course, is wisdom, and wisdom and Torah are interchangeable here, more or less, even though Torah literally means instruction. It doesn't mean the 5 books of Moses in this context at all. It means instruction. It means the mitzvot. I guess in that way, perhaps it does mean the 5 books of Moses, because that's where the commandments are. But here it's interchanged with the word, with the idea of chokhmah, of wisdom. Look, we haven't met for quite a while. Did somebody want to share with us something over the high holidays that perhaps has any bearing on our study today or our study of Proverbs? I meant to ask that first before we get into the text. No, okay. Well, feel free to chime in afterwards. And you'll notice, Megan, in this group, it is mostly women. In fact, it's women and gay men almost. And so it's a different energy than perhaps you find, Megan, in another framework we study in, where your woman's voice was so important to hear, at least that last time. Okay, welcome to Charles. I don't know that we know you, but we're happy to have you with us. And let's begin. Rabbi Malka, could you read for us verses 1 through 9?
Sons, heed the discipline of a father. Listen and learn discernment, for I give you good instruction. Do not forsake my teaching. Once I was a son to my father, the tender darling of my mother. He instructed me and said to me, let your mind hold on to my words. Keep my commandments and you will live. Acquire wisdom, acquire discernment. Do not forget and do not swerve from my words. Do not forsake her and she will guard you. Love her and she will protect you. The beginning of wisdom is acquire wisdom. With all of your acquisitions, acquire discernment. Hug her to you and she will exalt you. She will bring you honor if you embrace her. She will adorn your head with a graceful wreath, crown you with a glorious diadem.
Well, you got first shot, Malka, if you'd like. Any impressions?
Not really.
Okay. Rita Claire, now how did I guess that you would want to say something about verses that mention father and mother and children? Go ahead. Yeah, please unmute first.
Sorry. It says, do not forsake her. All of a sudden, it's talking about the father, and said the tender darling of my mother. And usually it doesn't talk that much about the female, but here it's saying, do not forsake her, and she will guard you. Who is her?
So her meaning Torah.
Right. In the simple meaning of the text, by the way, I heard from my old friend and colleague, Rabbi, actually she's not, she's Professor Ora Hornbrauser. She's married to a rabbi, but she and I studied Greek together, and she did when she was in Israel. And she completed her PhD afterwards at, I don't remember where it was. In any case, I heard her recently speak of the word pshat that I've often translated, usually translated as the simple meaning of the text. A better way of translating is the contextual meaning of a text, the textual meaning, because it's not always simple, right? So the contextual meaning of her here, Rita Claire, I believe, is chokhmah or Torah. It's
Okay.
wisdom and Torah. They're both feminine. But you are right to get. I do believe that that's semi-intentional here. That's part of the poetics of the text here in Proverbs is to lift up, and certainly we're allowed to say it lifts up the mother's wisdom, which is often kind of barely mentioned here, as you pointed out. It's usually about the father-son relationship. So I wondered also the same way you did as I was preparing here, and I saw her. Could we say in general that perhaps the father is stressed here in these texts more because the mother is maybe implied, at least subconsciously, in the feminine assignment as far as the language is concerned, of chokhmah, of wisdom. Yeah. Yes, Les.
The mother usually accepts her children unconditionally, and a father usually does not.
Well, I don't know if I would agree in reality, but I don't think I would necessarily agree in from a biblical point of view. There were mothers that favored sons, there were fathers that favored sons more than mothers. Yeah, but okay. In any case, though, I think the main topic here really is wisdom, and maybe the father-son, mother-son thing. It comes from an original context of this is where wisdom is imparted. Although that doesn't seem to be the message of the Book of Proverbs, that it's about a family thing. I think most of the commentators, certainly Fox, feels that this is reflective of language that was used in the school situation of teaching wisdom in the wisdom schools. Yes, Les.
Yeah, I mean, I think that most of this is a repetition of what we've heard before about, do what I say and you'll live and whatever. But there is an added thing for the bottom, which is basically a sort of wisdom for dummies, sort of like, well, the first step is you've got to acquire it. And I think that's the first time I've seen it, where do you start? And that's acquire it.
Yeah. In Hebrew, Reshit Chochmah, Kenei Chochmah. It's kind of like, it's about the economy, dummy, or whatever. It's one of those kind of things. If you want to talk about wisdom, first, why don't you get some?
It's not something that's innate. It has to be, you have to go after it.
Yeah.
It's an action on your part to acquire it.
Right. So you mean putting the book under the pillow at night? That thing doesn't work? From a medical point of view, I'm asking.
Right.
Right. Those memes that you see on social media about artificial intelligence, something about, before we start dealing with artificial intelligence, why don't we, I think we need to talk about natural stupidity or something like that. I don't know.
And then the other thing is that, to me, again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but wisdom, there's a little bit of a difference between wisdom and discernment in my mind. Sort of wisdom is sort of knowledge. Discernment is sort of being able to do what was the word that we use when we're talking about not black and white. I'm losing the word now. A nuance is sort of nuance, and being able to interpret it and understand that you may get a lot of information, but not all the information is correct.
Yeah, that's a distinction I think that we make as moderns. Here I don't know. The Hebrew is kne chokhmah, kne bina. And that might lead you to say they're two different things. Chokhmah, wisdom, bina, understanding, or as it's as it's translated here, discernment. Although it could also just be pure parallelism. So a good point, though. I think Eileen wanted to say something, and then Malka. Okay, go ahead, Eileen.
Well, in reading this, the first thing I thought of was Vador Vador from generation to generation. I mean, I visualized, at a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, passing the Torah from one generation to the other. That was the first visual that I got from this, passing wisdom Torah.
Right. That's a new thing, right?
Okay.
No, it's wonderful that you speak of it as if it sounded like as if it's always done. It wasn't done in my time when I had a bar mitzvah. It's something I started to see it in the late 80s. I saw it when I moved to when I started going to a non-Orthodox synagogue, Mevakshei Derech, where I eventually, that was my first position, was loosely affiliated with the Reconstructionist movement. And they had that custom of having the generations up and handing the Torah scroll. So symbolic, but in a traditional Orthodox, maybe they do it today, I doubt it, certainly not in the ultra-Orthodox world. Of course, that doesn't mean it's any less worthy and any less Jewish, of course, but it's interesting that it was given concrete expression, and that really brought the message home to me, because we've been saying L'dor vador nagid gadlecha ulenetzach netzachim right at the end of Kedusha, for centuries, and it didn't have that meaning. But the people that use the Dor vador a lot, I find in the Federation world, I hear a lot of that of Jews that are not necessarily serious synagogue goers, but I think that's been used a lot in the branding of the Federation world. Not a bad thing, a good thing. And I think that there it comes from a place of continuity, Jewish continuity, more about, we want to make sure that the next generation is Jewish, next generation is Jewish. Here, as I think you wisely pointed out, the meaning, the L'dor vador here would be the passing of wisdom, and not necessarily ethnicity,
Right.
although that may have been assumed. Yes, Malka.
Oh, I just wanted to say that that maybe the distinction between wisdom and discernment is that wisdom is when you acquire knowledge, and discernment is knowing what to do with the knowledge that you have.
Yeah. Would you say maybe it's also like kind of muscle memory? Not muscle memory, that's not the right word, but yeah, okay, yes, I'll leave that. I'll leave that for now. I was struck here by this line about the seventh line down, let your mind hold on to my words. What might I learn? What I learned from the hold on to the words is perhaps a message of, again, not the contextual meaning of the text, but where I'm going with it is when somebody speaks, is to listen and to hold on to the words before reacting. To hold on to it, look at the words, think about them, change direction, change perspective. And then it goes down two lines later, do not swerve from my words. In other words, there the idea is instruct, don't go off the path, but here, don't swerve my words, keep my words in mind. Keep in mind conversations. What I try to do in recent years is to follow up conversations that I've had over coffee, or other words, with an email or with a message. Reflecting, trying to think about conversations I had, and not just that was a moment. I mean, I try to do the same with books and with movies and TV as well. I think, but this idea of keeping the conversation going, and then 4 lines from the bottom, hug her to you, and embrace her in the next line. Right, this idea of creating an intimate relationship with the words of the other. That's kind of what I moved to interpret here. Anything else? Okay, we had this this famous line. It's famous in the third line in the Hebrew, Ki lekach tov natati lachem Torati al tazovu. That's the line that comes before Eitz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba. When we return the Torah to the ark. Again, this is not so much the Or Hamidbar experience of the last 5 years, because we only have a Torah on the high holidays and we don't have an ark, but we do sing that quite a bit. We do keep that in the high holiday services. And this idea of ki lekach tov natati lachem. Lekach is something that you take away. It's literally a takeaway. What my takeaway from the conversation was ki lekach tov. You're taking away, and it's paralleled with don't leave my Torah, or don't forsake my teaching. There was does anybody, we have any Yiddish speakers here? Bissell, do you remember what cake is in Yiddish?
Say it again.
Cake. Lekach.
Lekach.
Lekach is cake. I don't know how that's created to the Hebrew Naki lekach tov. So it used to be a joke in the old men's minyan world of synagogues. When I was in high school, I would go be part of the daily minyan in a local shul. Somebody would almost always say before eating a piece of erkichel, or some sort of a pastry after with the schnapps after the morning service. How do we know that we're commanded to eat cake every morning? Ki lekach tov natati lachem. God says, because I've given you a good piece of cake every morning. Again, it's not so funny if you don't speak Yiddish. It's not so funny if you don't know that world of older men with the schnapps and the erkichel in the morning. Okay. But let's see something that two things that Chazal, that the rabbis did with this, for instance. So Les, you want to read for us from Mechilta? Mechilta to Rabbi Yishmael is a earlier midrash. We'll call it midrash, a Tanaitic midrash, from the first few centuries of the Common Era, sometimes mistakenly called a midrash halacha, because there is a lot of halacha in it. That is law, but in this case, it's not halacha. Go ahead.
Rabbi Yehuda ben Bethaira says, it is written, and you shall eat, and you shall be sated, and you shall bless for the good land. What is lacking that good supplies? The good is Torah, as it is written, for a taking of good have I given to you.
Okay, a little bit complicated, but that verse from Devarim, from Deuteronomy, is the basis for us blessing our food, for Birkat Hamazon. Ve'achalta ve'savata uve'rachta. Shall eat, should be satisfied, and then you shall bless. And that's the basis in the Talmud for Birkat Hamazon, the grace, the blessing after the meal. But the continuation of that verse, it ends with the words al ha'aretz hatova. When you're living in that good land, or for the good land, living in the place where, or blessing for the blessing of the good land. And what Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is asking is, why do we need tova there? Why do we need goodness? You've got these three basic things of human existence, which is eating, being sated, and giving thanks. What do you need the good there for? It's not a real question, right? It's a question that allows him to make a connection with this verse from Proverbs, that ki lekach tov, because it's a good. So what does the goodness be there? What's missing? Don't think that you as a human being can be sustained on bread alone, right? You need Torah as well. That's his way of sneaking in Torah into this thing. And of course, we say a blessing. We don't say it here. We do Shabbat morning when we're together or online before we study some Torah, because we don't ceremony. We don't read.
Ceremoniously.
Thank you. We don't ceremoniously read other than on the high holidays. And so instead of saying Asher Bachar Banu, which is the blessing over the reading of the Torah when you have an Aliyah, we say Asher Kichanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We give praise, we give thanks for this dealing with this, making it our business to be in the study, the reading, rereading, interpreting, reinterpreting of the Torah. And and we'll see, that'll be developed in Midrash Tanchum in just a moment. This idea that it's a major part of life as well. It's something that we're commanded to do. It's not just a good thing. It's not only to, as the book of Proverbs may lead us to believe, to be a better person, to get ahead in life. It's also because it's an obligation to do so. Yeah, so Les, why don't you read from Midrash Tanchuma as well? We move on to a different era of Midrashim, the second half of the first millennium in the land of Israel. This is what's known as a homiletic Midrash. This is an excerpt from a sermon, a homily, on the Torah portion of Truma that has to do with gifts to the tabernacle and sacrifices. Go ahead.
That they take for me an offering. Scripture says elsewhere in allusion to this verse, for I give you good doctrine, forsake ye not my teaching.
Right, just a different English translation of what we read above. For I give you good instruction, do not forsake my teaching. Right, and so the connection between here in this case is not because of Torah, the word Torah, but the Hebrew for that they take me for me an offering is vayikhu li truma, vayikhu from the verb lakach, and to take, and that's the same root that gives us the noun above ki lekach tov, good instruction. So making that jump between two similar words from the same root. Go ahead.
Reb Simeon, the son of Lachish, explained this verse as follows. Once there were two merchants who were traveling together. One of them held a bolt of silk material in his hand, while the other held some pepper. They said to each other, let us exchange our merchandise. One took the pepper and the other took the silk. But one of them had previously owned was no longer his, and that which the other had owned likewise was no longer his. With the law, however, this is not so. If one man studies tractate Zeraim and another tractate Moed, and they instruct each other, each possesses knowledge of the both. Truly, is there any merchandise more valuable than this? Therefore, for I give you good doctrine, forsake ye not my teaching.
I give you good Torah, right? Kileka. What a lovely idea to put it, right? This idea that of exchanging things. Yeah, you give something away. Well, that's like duh for us, but we don't think of it. You've got two students in his mind, in Rish Lakish's mind. They're sitting in the Beit Midrash. One of them's expertise are the laws of agriculture. That's tractate Zarim. That means from the. There's not a tractate Zarim. I don't know why they use it. I didn't look in the English. I don't know why it says, maybe it says Masechet, but anyway, the laws of agricultural laws. And the other one is an expert at the laws of festivals, Moed. And when they study together, they're exchanging things, but each one gets to keep what they had. It's kind of a lovely win-win model that we think a little bit more about, other than the zero-sumness of everything that this idea of I'm struck by this. I like this a lot, and hence my usage from the very beginning of our study today of doing the business of Torah. Lasok b'divrei Torah means to be busy with the study of Torah, but esek, I don't know. I didn't check to see if in rabbinical Hebrew esek is business, but it became I think in medieval Hebrew, certainly in modern Hebrew, esek is business. Asakim, ish asakim is a business person, right? A businessman. And so to do the business of Torah is a business of exchange, but also keeping what you have. This loveliness of sharing wisdom. I didn't. Oh, I don't want to say this, but no, okay. I'm going to say it anyway, and I beg forgiveness if there's somebody here who is of that. I remember coming. I think maybe it was in Sweden. And something was really good. We ate at somebody's house, and I or Sasha asked for the recipe, and they said, under no circumstances, I'm going to give away the recipe. So to me, that's I think recipes are made to be giving to each other. This idea of propriety, it's my recipe. It's my secret recipe. I could understand, I guess, with a business, secret sauce. We're not going to tell you that it's ketchup and mayonnaise, Anyway, this exchange of knowledge. Yeah. Any comments on these rabbinic interpretations? Okay. All right then. Let's go on to the next section. Yes, Rita Claire. Recipes?
And no, not recipes. I share all my recipes. In fact, the girls want me to put them together in a book. At any rate, one thing that you said earlier about favorites, uh, when we were talking about the mother and the father, and I had said that usually mothers accept their children unconditionally, and a father has a harder time of doing that. And you use the word favorite, and I was thinking, in the Bible, there are favorites. It's, there's talk about having favorites. I have a problem having favorites.
And good that you do.
I don't know. I guess I'm not making my point, I guess. Why is it that there's so much talk about favorites in the Bible?
Look, the stories often have to do with continuity. Who's going to continue the line of the family? And therefore, one person is focused upon more than others. Somebody's got to be. It comes from the mentality of leadership, of royal leadership as well. A lot of our stories were shaped. The final shaping place or editorial shaping place of our stories have to do with the house of David being in charge and for the future, the Mashiach. So it can only be one. It can't be everybody together. We don't know yet about the biblical, biblical literature doesn't know yet about democracy or socialism in the way that we think afterwards of group making decision. And also, I think that Rita Claire, I think that it's a human tendency. People do sometimes it's easier sometimes for them if some children are going more in the path that they feel strongly about as opposed to others children who are not going in that path. I think it's a natural thing, and any story, any biblical story, like every other thing, it allows us a chance to examine that and re-examine it. Of course, we don't have to like it less.
Let me tie it to recipes.
Oh.
I imagine that for some cooks, chefs, bakers, they want their recipe, their production of bread or cake or stew to be the favorite of their children or whatever. And they protect it as sort of proprietary favoritism, thinking that somehow it becomes a commodity to which their favorness is judged.
A legacy. Yeah. And I wonder how that connects, Thanksgiving coming up soon, how that connects to something I didn't notice when I was growing up as a kid. We didn't make that big of a deal. We had Thanksgiving, but what I see here, and also we're privy because of social media, we're privy to everybody's innermost thoughts, right? People talk so much about Thanksgiving and how important it is for them to have the same food that they've been having in their house for, I don't know if it's for generations, Epis, but at least for as long as they can remember the specific, and I've been in people's homes as well, the specific recipe for, but what I really wanted to say to you, Rita Claire, is that I'm less interested in your recipes. I'm far more interested in you actually making those recipes and bringing them to Kiddush.
You want a challah, right?
Challah, a cake, whatever. A lekach. Okay.
Piece of kichel.
Yes, kichel. Okay, anything else? Okay, let's go on to 10:19. Ellen, would you like to read for us?
I'll be happy to. My son, heed and take in my words, and you will have many years of life. I instruct you in the way of wisdom. I guide you in straight courses. You will walk without breaking stride. When you run, you will not stumble. Hold fast to discipline. Do not let go. Keep it. It is your life. Do not enter on the path of the wicked. Do not walk on the way of evildoers. Avoid it. Do not pass through it. Turn away from it. Pass it by. For they cannot sleep unless they have done evil. Unless they make someone fall, they are robbed of sleep. They eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of lawlessness. The path of the righteous is like radiant sunlight, ever brightening until noon. The way of the wicked is all darkness. They do not know what will make them stumble.
Okay. First impressions?
Rabbi, I have a question. If is it when I see the Orthodox men that pray daily, all day long, and study, is it to keep their certainly their mind with learning Torah, but also to keep them away from the outside world where evil might enter it?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because it goes to what is Judaism about? What has Judaism been about? I'll preface by saying we don't have a tradition of monasticism in Judaism. There may have been exceptions. There may have been something similar to it amongst those that are known as Hasidei Ashkenaz in the 13th century. But by and large, that's not part of normative Judaism over the last 2,000 years since Rabbinic Judaism began, or at least the records that we have of it. And people were expected to work. This idea of only doing this stuff, while there were individuals that were kind of people supported them so that they would be the Torah scholars, but that wasn't a mass movement in any way. You wouldn't have seen them. They were, if you were a Jew and you had access to books, you would have read them. Maybe you would have heard a rabbi quote them. But this idea of massive yeshivas of multiple, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of men who spend many years separating themselves not only from the world by where they're sitting together, but also when they go out into the world by the clothes they have. That's a reaction to modernity. That's the Orthodox. There wasn't something called Orthodox until there was non-Orthodox, right? That's where the word Orthodox comes into being. It's the straight of the path, straight of way, apropos the path metaphor here. And so as a way to protect themselves from the dangers of modernity, which were less, really felt in the 19th century going forward, that is, keep, eating differently, Shabbat differently, women dress, whatever it might have been, was to kind of lock oneself up in Torah study. But that wasn't really part of the original idea of Judaism. That's something that morphed into as a reaction to modernity. So what they're doing today, in other words, I don't think this is talking about, this is metaphorical, right? This is when it talks about how you need to keep away from the wicked and walk only on certain paths, and that's the leitmotif of this paragraph, of course, is walking and moving on the path, on the course. It's 10, 12 mentions of something that has to do with walking here. That I think that's in order to teach those that want to become smart. They want to become wise, and so keep that your path. But that doesn't mean, it's a difference between going to, I would say, maybe going to university and hearing a course in something, or yeah, I mean, or yoga on the other spectrum of something spiritual and physical, or something that develops something in you, but then you go outside. Then when you're done with the yoga class, when you're done with the class university, you go outside and you have your regular life where you finish and you become part of the workforce, etc. So I think what it has become, though, I mean, especially in in the latter part of the 20th century when I was more aware of it and part of it for a while, is that we need to keep these boys pure. We need to keep them on track. The word that's used in Orthodoxy is al haderech. You may have heard that before, al haderech, to keep people on track, and that's it's not necessarily taken from here, but this is very supportive of that. Yeah, so I think go ahead, Ellen, because you read, and then Malka wants to say something, I think. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I think there's tremendous wisdom in this passage. I think that we know that as children become more independent, we are hoping that the people they associate with are people who have the values we want them to practice, that it's all too easy to make friends who are not on those paths and to be taken into paths that are dangerous to them.
Mhm. But a tricky thing as well, especially when you're raising children, right? At what level, to what degree do you control the path of a child? Yeah, Malka.
No, just a
No?
question about the third line from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It says Holeg or ad nakon hayom. I just wonder why they translated that ever brightening until noon. I probably would have said continues to shine until the perfect day, which probably to me goes more with if you uphold righteousness, it'll continue to shine into the perfect day. I guess you
You
can
mean
interpret that as Mashiach.
Nachon? Yeah, Nachon
Yeah.
is being perfect.
Yeah,
So
perfect day.
Nachon, we use it as perfect in modern Hebrew, but in biblical Hebrew, not but, also in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, is steadfast, something
Right.
that is set. So
Right.
I think maybe that's where they got,
No, that doesn't fit.
yeah, a Nachon Hayom. We'd have to look up and see the phrase Nachon Hayom if it appears
Mhm.
someplace else. Um, but there's another issue here, Marco, which is a more sinister issue. And that is the tendency of our wisdom tradition and our literary tradition, along with much of the Western world at least, that we know to associate light with goodness and dark with wicked, with badness. I can never remember the author's name and the name of the book, although it had a huge effect on me. I read it, I think, when I first came to Palm Springs. Walking in Darkness. Anybody know the book I'm talking about?
I do. It's Barbara's. I have
Yes.
it over on the table there. I'll go get it.
Yes, please do. Exactly. It's a really important book. It's so important I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember. That's in general. That's the memory issue that we'll get to in a few minutes as well. It's a really important book because what we realize is that if you say light is good and darkness is bad, then that seeps into other aspects of life as race related, specifically race relations. The color of people's skin. What could you show the book to everybody?
Wait a minute. I think I see it.
Oh, okay.
Is it the fact that noon is the brightest part of the day compared to the darkness?
Well, yeah, that would be the simple. It's called Learning to Walk in the Dark. Hold on just a
Learning to
second.
walk is really good.
Yeah.
Who is the author?
Barbara Brown Taylor.
I'll put I'm not telling you to buy it on Amazon, of course, because that's become a little bit more challenging to read, but it's the link is in the chat box. So Les, the reality, every metaphor is based on a reality, right? So the reality, I think, is the idea of the least dark of the day is noon, right? That's what, yeah.
So they interpreted
The
Nakon
wicked
Hayom as
is
noon.
the darkest of the dark.
So let's take one at a time. Les, why don't you go ahead and then Malka? Go ahead. I didn't hear.
Well, and that the wickedness is the darkness of the dark side.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you want to say, Malka?
No, I was just clarifying about, I did a little search while we were talking about Nakon
Mhm.
Hayom, and I couldn't see anywhere where it meant the middle of the day, like Aunt Ryan.
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I'm thinking of
Anyway.
Nachon Libi Elohim.
Can I have that title again, please?
It's
Book.
it's in the chat box. Can you see the chat box? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, to everyone. It's called Learning to Walk in Darkness.
in Okay.
I've read other books by Barbara Brown Taylor as well.
Learning to walk in the dark
Yeah. Oh, sorry. In the Dark. Thanks.
is good.
Yeah, good book. Yes, Helen.
I think what is hinted at here is if you are wicked at noon, if you do bad things at noon, you are likely to be seen. So you are more likely to do them in dark, where you can do it surreptitiously and get away with it.
Right. Absolutely. Sure, I would agree with that. And yet, you know, what is this? What is this language? If we're talking about inclusivity, what does this language say about people who can't see, for instance, right? People who are in the dark. But, you know, all the things that the cartoons that had the bad guys in black, the good guys in white. I forgot what cartoon I'm thinking of in particular. Something from the newspaper of growing up. Yeah, and it's still in general. I mean, in recent years, it's less so, but it's a challenge. It's a really good book to read. I think I found it far more effective than a lot of the other books that I read on relationships between people of different backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, and racial backgrounds.
Do you think, I am thinking that is an issue of of a certain part of the time of the world, that there has been a vast time of the world before slavery where that really wasn't an issue. In Egypt, it was dark people who were head of that whole country.
And therefore,
they are not necessarily the bad guys. They are when they take, and when we talk about them taking slaves, but you know, we know of vast civilizations in Africa where they have done amazing things. I think this idea of being aware of skin color is more in terms of modern times, that it's likely when this material was written, that really wasn't an issue.
yeah. Malka, would you like to respond?
I was agreeing with her because the concept of color as we understand it in the modern world, that's a medieval and going forth invention. And there was a book written, Snowden, Before Color Consciousness or something like that, that talks about how that was really how we understand race was a modern European invention, and that it wasn't really important in biblical times, at least, what color you were. It was important what nationality you were, you know, those evil Egyptians or those awful Philistines or whatever it was, right? Or Babylonians. So nationality was more important than race. The Bible was cognizant of people's skin color, but that wasn't the motivating factor, I think, for any of the things that they wrote.
Yeah, my comment, Ellen, was not about the biblical text itself and the context of the biblical text. I would absolutely agree with you, but a comment as to how we continue to use this kind of language today in the reality that we exist in the post-slavery, except for not exactly and not totally post-slavery world that we live in here in the United States, or in Israel. The issue of skin color in Israel is a huge issue, which is not often talked about. This came up again. First of all, we saw how Ethiopians were treated when they came to the country, as compared to those that came from the former Soviet Union. There was a huge difference. There's a community that was lifted against into the public view last week when one of their own sons died in battle. His last name is Young. I don't remember his first name. Part of the Hebrews, the Black Hebrews in Dimona. And there's been decades long battle with them not being accepted because they're not Jew. They call themselves Jews. They're not Jews. Can they get? Which was totally race, or is totally because it's a so the racism it exists in the two places that I've lived here and in the three places in Sweden as well in a different way, but very much so. Yeah, so that's what in other words, we look at this. So looking at this 10 to 19, what a wonderful expression of as some of you have said. Um, if I'm going down, if you follow with me, the lines, the way, the straight courses, the walk, run, hold, enter on the path, pass, turn away, pass, and then down to path of the righteous, way of the wicked, stumble. This whole idea, it's from a poetic point of view, it's beautiful, but that issue of the darkness is something for us to be careful about. That's all I'm saying. And I don't often recommend a book with so much. I really think this is it's an easily read book. It's really good, and we'll try to remember her name going forward, Barbara Brown Taylor. There's one more thing that I wanted to point. I'm sorry, somebody want to say something? No. There's one more point I wanted to point out here, and you see the longest line in Hebrew is, unless they make someone fall, they are robbed of sleep. V'nigzalash natam. Taken out of context, this idea of gezel shena, the theft of sleep, right? Somebody steals sleep from you. That's something that is not talked about in the laws of stealing of property laws in classical Jewish literature, legal literature. It does come up in the last few hundred years with the Musar movement, if I remember correctly. And that is when you're thinking of sins that perhaps you've done on Yom Kippur, and you get to Gazalnu, right? The Gimel, Gazalnu. And one of the things that I specifically remember from high school is reading one of the commentators. Yes, think about all the things you've stolen, like using somebody's towel to dry your hands when it's not your towel. That comes up in using somebody's pen without permission. In the yeshiva world, there's all using somebody's book without permission, right? I remember seeing when I went to Baltimore to Ner Yisrael once for a summer. Oh, it was horrible. But people had in their Gemaras that said, "Ani makpid gamur." I am absolutely strict about people not using my book. Whoa, right? And so this idea of stealing somebody's sleep, I still feel to this day when there's fireworks or when there's a party. We live not that far from arenas, and there'll be loud music all through this weekend coming up. They're stealing my sleep, right? Stealing sleep. I mentioned this to my good friend and colleague Eli Spitz, Rabbi Eli Spitz, who's finishing a manuscript on sleep, or just finished a manuscript on sleep in the Jewish tradition. And I mentioned this to him. Um, he hadn't heard of it because it's not in classical literature. If you don't read Musar literature, you don't see that. Okay, yes, Ellen.
This line really strikes me because usually we are robbed of sleep when we've done something bad and we can't sleep. And they are referring to the evil here. And unless they do something evil, they can't sleep.
I won't rest until I've destroyed another person's life, right? Okay. So I think, can we squeeze in to go 2-3 minutes afterwards and finish up here? Okay, let's see. Megan, you want to read for us? We're 2027, right?
My son, listen to my speech. Incline your ear to my words. Do not lose sight of them. Keep them in your mind. They are life to those who find them, healing for the whole body. More than all that you guard, guard your mind, for it is the source of life. Put crooked speech away from you. Keep devious talk far from you. Let your eyes look forward, your gaze be straight ahead. Survey the course you take, and all your ways will prosper. Do not swerve to the right or the left. Keep your feet from evil.
So I'll just okay. Thank you, Charles. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you. Hope to see you again.
Hope to be here again.
Great, good. The poet has moved from talking the metaphor of walking and the way to parts of the body. And so if you follow my English, I'll point out a word in almost every line. Listen, ear, sight, mind. And then in the middle of it, healing for the whole body. Then mind, speech, talk, eyes, gaze, survey, feet. And there's probably others that I missed. To me, that wraps this paragraph into this kind of a cohesive, poetic cohesiveness to it.
And the
How about-
previous group added taste and smell.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so Les, to your point that you made like early on, is that you're not sure how much is new material here. There's not a lot of new material. It seems these are collections of traditions, of poems or of wisdom traditions that somebody collected at some time, and it's really hard, judging from the modern commentators, they're all over the place, I think, as to how do you organize this? What was the editorial organization? So I usually try to keep it. I mean, let's just, take it one piece at a time. Kind of like Song of Songs. I'm walking the footsteps of my teacher, Yair Zakovich, as opposed to others that wanted to see how each section is interrelated to the other. No, these are erotic love poems that were brought together in an anthology of sorts. But let's take a look and see. Let's finish off today with something from the Babylonian Talmud. I hope it's not too obscure that the section of Megillah, of Masechet Megillah, Tractate Megillah, is dealing with, can you write a Megillah by heart, or do you have to copy it from a text? Something, right? Maybe we were looking at the Torah scroll together on Shmini Atzeret the other day, and as we rolled from the end of Dvarim to the beginning of Breshit, and so as I love to do, we talk about the different ways of writing and how a Torah scroll is different than our whole concept of writing and publishing today, how it's the same. And often people want to ask about the scribe, and that it takes a year usually, and it's at least $40,000, and there's better scribes and there's not so better scribes. And but what we learned from Masechet Megillah is you can't write it by heart. You've got to be copying from the text. And then it brings a story of Rabbi Meir, who I think it's Rabbi Meir, who had to go someplace, or somebody, maybe it was Romer, had to go outside the land of Israel to do something with the calendar because he wasn't allowed by Roman law. And he got stuck there on Purim, so he didn't have a Megillah. He wrote one for himself by heart. And the people said, was that a kosher Megillah? If he didn't copy it, as opposed to writing it by heart, which is in itself is a really interesting thing, right? There is halacha, law, that says you're actually not supposed to pray by heart. You're supposed to pray from the prayer book. I'm a big transgressor, this is many of you know, right? Even when I'm praying for the prayer book, I often add and delete words that are there to my own ideology and beliefs. Anyway, here it says, Rabbi Abau said, Rabbi Meir is different. In other words, he who wrote it was Rabbi Meir, who wrote the Megillah by heart. As in him is fulfilled the verse, and let your eyelids look straight before you. What we had in verse 25 here. Let your eyelids look straight before you. Rabbi Bar Chama said to Rabbi Yirmiyah of Difti, what is the meaning of, and let your eyelids, which are afapecha, from the root afaf, aleph pe pe, look straight, yashiru, before you? What does it mean that to let your eyelids look straight is the poetic way of saying let your eyes look straight. But the word for eyelids is afaf, and afafaf means fleetingly, like the English expression as well, in the blink of an eye, right? Yeah, I love when those things match up semantically in different languages. And so it says this is referring to the words of the Torah, that usually you would read and you would forget what you read in the blink of an eye. In Rabbi Meir's case, he remembered. Now, to me, Sasha and I are so feeling our forgetfulness. Really, it's beginning to alarm us a little bit how forgetful we are, and where we put things and where we keep things. And I say this is one of the younger members, but not the youngest, I'm sure, of who's on right now. But yeah, so fleetingly looking because your eyelids, right? Yeah. Yes, anything on these two things before? Okay, Sue, I want to say I'm concerned with you. We'll talk soon about Sid's health, and Eileen, you had a shooting in your neighborhood.
Block and a half from my house.
Oy boy, oy boy. Yeah, yeah. Okay, and we have Pride coming up, Kabbalat Shabbat Friday night. We'll be together at the church with a few hundred, 200 people usually around. And look forward to you being there and being with us on Facebook. We'll be putting it up on Facebook as well.
Oh, great.
Okay, see some of you tomorrow, otherwise next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.